All right, let's bring in my first guest of the night, and I'm pleased to say I'm joined by Liberal Senator Gerard Rennick. Senator, great to have you on the show. At the top of the show, I spoke about power prices, which are set to rise again from July the 1st. Mine are going up by 50%. We're hearing cases of up to 80%, and the energy industry says there's more to come. Now, I'm putting the finger squarely at the politicians. They're out of touch. They've been too dependent on renewables, and they're drinking all this Kool-Aid. Am I right? And if I am, or even if I'm not, what can the government do now?
Okay, good evening, Cory. Look, I think there's a lot more to what's going on with renewables than what meets the eye. Anyone with a shred of common sense could see that power prices were going to rise, 5 to 10 years ago as renewables increased their share of energy into the grid. However, any politician that actually tries to stand up and say this is generally shot down by the left and also by the media and industry groups. Unfortunately, the renewable industry is a very much driven by rent seekers, and unfortunately, those rent seekers are actually big business. And the deeper symptom here is the fact that superannuation now has $3.3 trillion under management, of which about $2.7 trillion is by superannuation funds whose boards are not elected by the people. Now, once upon a time, industry was driven by productivity and not ideology. But what we now have got are the people who control industry, and if you control $2.7 trillion in capital, you control industry. And on top of that, if you control that much capital, you also control information. Now, many, like mainstream media, for example, they rely on their advertising from many of these big industries. So we live in a post-fact world now, Cory, where it's all about the narrative. So if you are, and there's been conservative politicians who have tried to call this out, especially in the National Party, myself and others, you will be abused on social media and you will cop a hard time. So it is very hard to speak out. But we have to get big corporations getting back to what they used to do, which is be driven by productivity. Because if they were driven by productivity, they would never have bought into this renewable fairy tale in the first place.
Yep, they're all driven now by getting money from government, money for nothing, a protected industry, and we pay the price. Speaking of money, Senator, Dr. David Adler from the Australian Jewish Association pointed out the federal budget is doubling Australia's contribution to Palestinian territories. They're getting $70 million in the next couple of years. Now, I know that this aid money is not always being used appropriately. There's evidence that it's being used for martyr payments and pushing propaganda against the Jewish people. Is this the right move for Australians to be funding this, doubling the funding, while we're struggling, so many are struggling at home?
That's a good question, Cory. No, it's not. I think we should look after Australians first. I'm not against foreign aid in the South Pacific because I do believe that Australia needs to have a strong influence in the South Pacific. But in the main, no, I don't think we can afford it. And I don't think we should be, spending money where we're not really going to make much of a difference anyway.
You're quite right. Now, Senator, there's some breaking news, and you haven't been briefed on this. I apologise, but we're just receiving information that Simon Crean, the former Labor leader, a titan of the Labor movement, has passed away. I have no further details on that, but it is significant because he was a colossus. He ended up challenging, I think, or had an aborted challenge against Kevin Rudd, which was absolutely in the national interest. So our thoughts and prayers go to the Crean family and all those, quite frankly, in the Labor movement who celebrate his life. All right, Senator, Twitter has been issued with a demand from the Australian E-Safety Commissioner to provide information on what it is doing to tackle online abuse. Apparently there's $700,000 fines every day if it doesn't comply. I'm a bit suspicious of this. It's only since a free speech advocate's got on there. What do you make of it?
I'm suspicious of it as well, Cory. I should just classify that, state from the start that I don't believe in abuse on social media either. But the best way to actually censor abuse on social media is block anyone that is abusing you. I'm very sceptical of having, yet again, unelected and unaccountable bureaucrats putting their interpretation onto things, especially as you pointed out. I mean, this is now on Twitter. Are they doing it to Facebook? because I've noticed there's been a change in tone towards the left when it comes to Twitter. They used to love being on Twitter, but since Elon Musk has taken over and allowed right-wing views back on it, there's been no shortage of vitriol against him and other people who believe in free speech. So, and I know, for example, that Elon Musk has come out and said that he's not going to tolerate people calling other people cis, trans people calling people cis people. And I have to say I agree with him, and that is not at all offensive.
Yeah, and it's set to get worse. There is legislation now being mooted about a $6 million fine for misinformation, and ACMA will be ruling on that. Nothing could go wrong there, could it? Hey, Senator, I've got to leave it there because I've got a really short show tonight, but thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. You enjoy the winter break. Keep doing the great work that you do right through your electorate. All right.